everyone, and welcome back to episode 3. And now we're right up here with Magistrate Severin, and let's see what he has to say now we've gone and got that report for him. It is troubling to hear of the scourge slipping past the bulwark. Even now they are ceaseless in their assaults. But we will not give in. The Lich King is dead. We will not be taken again. That's the end of his chain for now. And let's go see around town who else we have some quests to hand in. Executor Zygand. Yes, that makes sense. Since the Worgen have come streaming out of Gilneas, I knew it would only be a matter of time before they arrived here in Tirisfal. This was the Worgen we saw then, at the body. These Worgen must be dealt with, and quickly. Our first priority is to eliminate any which may have infiltrated Brill. I want you to be on the lookout for any suspicious activity here in Brill. Sparks, we know that these Worgen can hide in the shadows, so look for any signs you can find. Footsteps, kicked up rocks, anything. Interesting. They're among us. The werewolves.
What would you ask of death?
This was the supply mission I did in between episodes, the flyover one that I mentioned. Figured no one really wanted to watch that.
Intriguing.
But here, they're Dark Hound Pounding. You have done well, Janks. I thank you for your efforts. I am to understand that another one of those foolish dwarven mountaineers has just been captured. The Death Guard has him stored here in this building, and they've assigned one of their own to persuade him not to escape. Why don't you go see how the captured mountaineer enjoys this special drink I made for him? It contains a subtle hint of what the Dark Lady has planned for the rest of Azeroth. More horrific tests. If I was in the character's shoes myself, I'm not sure I'd be down for all of this, even forsaken by the rest of society. I'm not sure I fully agree with testing the plague, but we are just a soldier in the army at this point. We can't really make any choices. Gotta do what we have to do to fit in. A drink at last. What matter of ale is this? I'm sure it's no Rhapsody malt, but I'll take anything to wet the whistle at this point. I wouldn't if I were you. Well, I mean, death is a better fate than the pumpkin on the last guy. Let's go hand this right in here. As you're probably already realizing, the Royal Apothecary Society is a widespread organization. We take our plague alchemy seriously. It is our belief that the more agents we have performing experiments, the sooner we will realize our objective. One of our agents performs his work at a small encampment to the north of here. His name is Jared, and he could use an apprentice of your stature. Well, I'm not sure I want to be anyone's apprentice making plague. But even right from the beginning, Sylvanas is a dark character. Of course, we have all the knowledge going in of all of her recent events and so a lot of her motivations, but for a new player coming in, anyone would think the Dark Lady was a bad guy. Interesting that AoEs don't work on these. I guess it's to stop new players from accidentally using an AoE and being overwhelmed. That would be my guess. But the Worgens skulking about our graveyards. Let's see if we can find the rest of them. Here they are. But yeah, we will get to see more of Sylvanas' true motivations. Even with the Lich King dead, this is where she's... Well, she jumped from the top of Icecrown at this point and came back with newfound purpose. It'll be interesting to see how, well, remember how her character was back then. Because I remember the whole Wrathgate incident. And for those who didn't play Wrath or don't really remember, it's when we get to the Wrathgate to confront the Lich King. And it was Putress who was basically used the plague against the dead and the living. Almost wiping them both out if it wasn't for the red dragonflight coming stepping in. But Sylvanas blamed that completely on Putress and Varimathras. But I feel like even she knew what was going on. She would have been okay with it. They were convenient scapegoats in case it didn't work out as planned. Everyone is a bit sick of Sylvanas, I think, these days. But I still think that I want to see more from this new side of Sylvanas, the one with her soul returned. It'd be interesting to see where this takes her character, because this is the first time we've ever really encountered her as the Ranger General that she was. I mean, sure, she's tormented now by all the things she did as the Dark Lady, but now she's fully restored to herself. I feel like we need to re-get to know her. It will be interesting once the Sylvanas fatigue wears off and they can gently bring her back into the story. It's going to be nice. Ah, Knolls. Grave Robin. Sounds about right. Now, the spec I chose, since we're almost level 10, I went over some options for the spec. I was thinking Arcane is what I usually level with as mage. But this guy doesn't seem all that smart. Sparks seems like his brain rotted just a little bit. And Fire doesn't seem too healthy for an undead. Not unless you've constantly having to put the flames out on yourself. And with the mention of the frost in the last episode, how they can still sense the death frosts through their veins, part of their resurrection, figured we could go for a nice undead frost mage vibe and chill and freeze things to death. We can make everything as ice cold as we are. Here we are. This must be where Jared is. Looks like a lot of plague experiments are going on up here anyway. Not that different from the Scourge when you look at it. Is that oh, it's a leper gnome apprentice. How lovely. Holland, he's an amateur. You don't need a fancy 2-story apothecarium to make plague. You need love, and perhaps some good assistance. Let me show you how plague is really made. This will be interesting then. His plague is a labour of love. My envoy just delivered me a bushel of gloomweed. Gloomweed. I don't need gloomweed, I need doomweed. You can see the predicament that I'm in. I'll make it worth your while to gather what I need. Bring me enough to doomweed, and I will give you a suitable reward. It is my understanding that they like to plague the flora in mass gravesites, to the north of the Brill graveyard. Hurry, and be mindful of the gnolls. And let's see what his apprentice has for us. Working for Jared isn't all that bad. He might lose his temper now and again, but he pays well, and even gives me a boost when I can't reach something in the cart. But that does seem nice. The mass graves within the forest to the west of us made to accommodate the impressive number of Tirisfal that suffered when the plague first came. The bodies in these graves have so far been spared an undeath, but the Scourge now send rot-hide gnolls to gather their corpses and use them to bolster their armies. This cannot be allowed. Your task is twofold: slay the rot-hides at the mass grave and Garen's haunt, and gather from them embalming ichor that gives them life.
You have a great day now.
That sounds like a good plan. We should stop the Scourge from gaining more forces. Even with the Lich King dead, the Scourge army continues. I think that's the creepiest part about them. They still have almost like a purpose. Even if it's not one person directing that purpose. They still have that instinct to survive. We definitely need some updates on the Scourge. I know we got some, well, very little at the start of Shadowlands in the pre-event when all the Scourge went crazy. But now we're back on Azeroth, I feel like I really want to know what the Scourge is up to today. Who's in charge? Is it still vying for power from each other? Here we go. I will select Frost. I would especially, there's been a lot of chatter on our Discord in the past about the updates of where we think the Sand Lane are today. Since we know that the curse was much older than the Scourge on Azeroth. We see evidence of that from Legion, when the vampiric Vrykul were found and the curse spread out from there. It seemed very like the Sand Lane. Hopefully at some point. There's only so much Blizzard can cover, right? So I'm hoping at some point they do go back and we get to see. Ah, gnolls. Being ganged up on already. The Curse of Thule. Actually, I have no idea who Thule is. Perhaps it's someone in this area who's leading the Scourge forces. Let's keep looking for that Doomweed. Here we are. We will be moving on out of Tirisfal very shortly. We're sort of on the last vestiges of this area. I think the last story beat is the Scarlet Crusade, after we've learned more about the plague and the Forsaken obsession with it. But it's understandable why the rest of the Horde does not trust the Forsaken. How can you trust them when they do things like this? They must have some knowledge of the devastating experiments that are going on here. I wonder how all of you feel on how do you think the Horde coexists? You have the really pacifistic Tauren, who I can't imagine ever supporting any of the things that the undead do, the Forsaken. And it's such for them to exist in the same sphere, I find it hard to reconcile. Early on, sure, it was out of necessity, Well, at the time they neither had the strength to stand on their own two legs. But now did they do it out of a sense of loyalty? Did they work together? Or do they still feel threatened by the Alliance? Or even some of the other forces going on, that they feel like they need each other? Ah, these are the mass graves. Orcs for sure. I could see them. Orcs don't, while they talk a lot about honor, I don't actually think the orcs are all that honorable. That's usually the first thing to go out the window once they need a bit more power. The Blood Elves too can, as long as it served their own ends, I could see them supporting plague experiments to a degree, until it became a danger to them. But the Tauren, and now some of the allied races too, I cannot imagine them in any circumstance supporting any of this. If we ever do get an update on the world revamp, it'll be nice to see this sort of inner conflicts, especially since the faction conflict is gone. We can now see some of the more stories that go between the factions themselves. Like the Night Elves currently seem to be peeling away not just from the Alliance but all the rest of the races while they deal with their own problems. The aftermath of all the horrific things that have happened to them over the past few expansions. It'd be nice at some point if maybe if Sylvanas ever does come back, we get some Forsaken stories that perhaps explore what it's like now. Are they still obsessed with the plague? Maybe the Horde doesn't put up with that anymore. Maybe they sort of break out and go their own ways, not really to be trusted. Or they could integrate better, who knows. It's the great thing about WoW's story, it can go either way. But let's hand this back into Crispin.
Be seeing you.
Is your task complete? Have you destroyed those dog things and drained them of their ichor?
Off and away.
Expertly done. The Scourge are mistaken if they think they can use those corpses against us, and the fluid you gathered from the rot-hide salves will be studied by my master. It may have secrets we can use against them.
You have a great day now.
Maggot's Eye is a foul beast even by Gnoll standards. He leads a band of renegade Gnolls through the land, tearing up glades and stealing whatever corpses he can find along the way. Those are our corpses. We had plans for those. Maggot's Eye resides just up the path from us. Show him no mercy. Mercy is for the weak.
Off and away.
Such an angry little leper gnome.
Speak quickly.
That's okay, he'll fit right in here.
Goodbye.
They brought me Gloomweed. Gloomweed?
Dark lady.
Ah, my Doomweed. Excellent. These will come in quite handy. You've done me, the lady, a fine service today. As promised, here is the reward that you deserve.
Our time will come.
Off the scales. While you were collecting samples for me, my experiments led me to realize that more reagents will be required for this new disease to spread properly. Poisoning some hapless victim is child's play. Plaguing an entire world proves to be a bit more complicated. I will need several scales from murlocs in the vicinity. You will find the creatures ambling brainlessly along the coast to the north.
Victory for someone.
Not sure how brainless murlocs are.
Pleased to meet you. Alrighty then.
It seems that Jared has you hunting murlocs to the north. That's good. We can use their parts for our poisons. I get a little worried sometimes though. The Vilefin spawning grounds are not far from Trurusfall's northern coast, so you'll probably notice several tadpoles among the adults on the shore. If these impressionable young murlocs were to seek revenge against us, that could ruin us. Go chase them, and show them that the Forsaken and the Horde are not to be trifled with.
Be seeing you.
I mean, horrific. Scare them into submission. It's fitting with the rest of the area. But here we are. This is the northern coast I mentioned, where it's just so haunting. Giant decaying fish corpses along the way. There's bones of sea monsters just in the ocean, and the great fog. It's got a sort of New England spooky vibe to it. Very Lovecraftian. I like it. Here we go, we can take out Maggot Eye here, who took up residence in this house. He is very fast though, even while slowed. As much as I like the dark aesthetic of the Forsaken, it will be nice to get to some more brighter areas, closer to the living. Feel like we've spent too much time in the land of the dead. But there's him dealt with. And then we can deal with these Murlocs. Oh, I have to apologise a little bit for the jump cut just there. For some reason, it just stopped recording. But we finished the quest. And nothing really of note happened. We scared some tadpoles to make sure they were rightly scared of the Forsaken in the area. And we killed some of the adults for their fins, so we can use them in our plague experiments with Jared. Let's hand these in.
Alrighty then. Off and away.
Excellent work. Now if only I can convince Jared to let us move our operation into that shack. That was the plan all along.
You have a great day now.
Did they run from you? Good. This is better than killing them. If they live to tell the tale, then future generations of Murlocs will learn to fear us. That is actually smart. Especially if you intend to live a long time. Like the Forsaken, you can play the long game. The scales are perfect, exactly what I needed for this concoction. Have some upgrades to put on, I believe. The Agamand mills to the west have been lost to the Scourge. The Agamand family has been slain and the entire residence has been claimed by the Scourge. This is probably the largest Scourge outpost in Tirisfal. If you think you're enough of a mage, head up there and speak with Coleman Farthing. He's been doing his best to take the land back and he'll need help. Just follow this road. It'll take you right to him. To the largest Scourge presence. This will be good. We can do some good. Feel like we need to make up for all the terrible things we have done already. But it was, I think the little leper gnome is right. That shack would be a nice area with the barn here to run the experiments if they can just drive the rest of the gnolls off. Excellent place to do some more experiments, and it's got to be better than braving the elements all the time. Now we know that for the undead, the Forsaken, when they first come back, they're not quite stitched together properly. They actually lack. It's noted a few times how they lack the ability to feel the elements the same way we do. They don't feel the cold as much, or the heat, or touch. The only real thing they feel is pain from the light, at least at first. It does become better over time. There is Iceland. Nice. Ah, get back. Oh, you're not Scourge, are you? Thank the Banshee Queen that you're here. I've greatly underestimated how bad it's gotten up here. The strongest point in the mills is the Agamand family crypt. With necromancy, Captain Dargle has raised the ancestors of the Agamands and plans to use them against us. This cannot pass and you must stop it. Travel to the Agamand family crypt and defeat the raised Agamand ancestors. Ah, wailing banshees roam the area. If you saw our video The one where I covered my theories on how sound magic works. These banshees will be a whole lot more interesting to account for now. The death whale. You'll notice a lot of them. This is where I did a lot of research. I got hit by a lot of banshees when I was working on that speculation video on how I think sound magic works. And the banshees were a big catalyst for me understanding this. But as much as it's just in theme to say wailing and the banshee scream being iconic, I still feel like it has that deeper meaning. How that death wail that they use against you is their own. The exact same way Sylvanas uses it. Shifting that alignment towards death. Piercing the veil. Here we are, in the Agamond family. A family of millers. Must have been quite prominent when the Lauder on humans were in the area. To have such an estate as large as this. And that scream we hear when they die, even faintly, is them reliving that same horrific scream from when they died themselves. We are almost here, deep into the crypt. There he is, Captain Dargo. A Scourge minion himself. We should be more than fine to beat him, destroy him and head back. Cut the head of the snake. It seems to work a lot with the hierarchical system of the Scourge. Once you take out the leader, they tend to fumble for a while until new leadership is found, always rallying under that banner. I guess it's because most of their forces are pretty mindless. They need one that still has some of their mind intact to guide them. There we go. Quest. You sense a malign presence coming from within the skull of the beast. Coleman Farthing may be interested. A malign presence. Are they being controlled from afar then? That would be interesting to find out. Was he just a pawn rather than the actual head of the snake? It is certainly seeming that way. Here we go. Coleman Farthing will know anyway. He's been up here much longer.
Hello.
Your actions struck a telling blow against the Scourge, and your victory will not go unnoticed. Not by the Forsaken, nor by our enemies. Continue the struggle as we all do, and one day the Forsaken will have the dominion over Azeroth that they are owed. I'm not so sure about that. I don't think the Forsaken are owed dominion. A place in the world for sure. Your actions... There we go, that's the same one.
Dark Lady, watch over you.
The Haunted Mills. Is this Dargol? He was vicious even in life, with a temper that bit deep and a blade that bit deeper. Undeath has not done him any favours, though it suits his personality. Coleman holds the skull up and peers into the empty eye sockets. Yes, this was certainly Dargol. I can sense his malice, even from the remains you fetched.
Victory.
Oh, so he had just a darkness about him. The Scourge are trying to form a base here at Agamemnon Mills. If they do, then they can stage further attacks within Tiraspol. The orders have been given. The Scourge and the mills must be destroyed. Collect notched ribs from the rattle-caged and cracked-skulled soldiers, and blackened skulls from the dark-eyed bonecasters.
Trust no one. Oftentimes,
The Agamemnon family was the most prosperous family in Tiraspol Glades. I used to work their mills before the plague. Now the Scourge first came, the Agamemnon fortified their home and convinced those in their employ to remain and help them defend. We were fools, but at least we were loyal fools. The Agamemnons, in their pride, doomed us to undeath, and now they are minions of the Scourge. Serve the Forsaken by defeating the Agamemnons who fell to the plague. Serve me by bringing me their remains. Very standard of the nobles. There's no way they would loosen their grip of power. Losing their money from nobles at this time was probably a fate worse than death, worse than becoming a minion of the Scourge. Let's go take a look over this hill and see what we're gonna have to deal with. Well, here they are, the old mill. It does look pretty overrun. We definitely have to stop this from becoming a base. But before we go on this final adventure for the zone, I will leave it here, and I will catch you in episode 4 hopefully. Thank you all so much for staying around, and don't forget to come back anytime.